Well, so do we want to talk about homework, or do we just want to know that we did or did not do it?
Oh my goodness. All right, so today we are starting with chapter 8 of the energy bus. We do have homework from last week, so Jenny, do you want to talk about that and what your experience with the homework was?
Well, of course, this homework was all my favorite things rolled up into one little assignment. I think Ellen's just going to pick on me through this whole book, because the longer I read it, the worse it gets. I know why I could never read it before, because now I'm reading it and going, holy crap. So, but the homework was to write down your vision for your life, including your health, your vision for work, career, job, and team, and your vision for your relationship with your family. And anybody that's known me longer than 45 minutes will know that words like why and vision just hit my head in a very negative, I don't want to talk about it way. But so then I was reading farther in the book, and one of the things that I have to find this, because I realized why I don't like visiony things. And it was, well, it had something to do with the fact that you spent so much time in your life doing what everybody else thought you needed to do that you never thought about what you wanted for yourself. So honestly, at 60 years old, that's kind of a mindset change of what I want for myself, because I didn't ever really worry about that. It was what my kids needed, what my husband needed, that kind of stuff. So yeah, this is a little rougher for me, but I did actually write stuff down. So,
well, I think Jenny, you're hitting the nail on the head. I think that's a very common occurrence, and I think a lot of people go through their entire life without even making that realization that, and so I think it's super powerful that, that you are coming to that realization, and yeah, it might be uncomfortable, but powerful.
well, nobody ever asked. I mean, seriously, nobody ever asked me what I wanted. They were all like, this is what we need to do. And I was like, okay. We can do that. We can get that done, But yeah, so it's just a different thing. And realizing now, looking at it, had I known at 40 these questions, the answers would be totally different now anyway. So yeah. So yeah, it's been interesting. So maybe by the time I'm 72, the word why won't send me into a tailspin. They'll go, what's your why? And I'll go, living to be 73. What's that?
That's funny.
But yeah. So do we want to read like chapter 8, or does anybody else want to share their homework stuff?
I do visioning like that. I try to do it quarterly. And it's just kind of, the way I look at it is I try to figure out like my ideal, like what is my perfect weekly schedule? What is my, what's my perfect organization? What's my perfect month end? Like what do everybody hit? What does everybody hit? What does, and I think like, what's my perfect day? What's my perfect like home life? What's the vibe in our house? Like I always, I do that on a consistent basis. I try to do it quarterly, and I check in to see where I am and how far I've come towards whatever that vision is, because there are times, I remember the very first time I did this, it was, make your ideal weekly schedule. Because I was trying to figure out, because, when you're a stay-at-home mom, your schedules, you don't really have a schedule, right? And so I knew the significance of having a schedule, because I knew I would be able to get more accomplished throughout the day, and I would be more consistent with the schedule. But it just wasn't sure where to start. And so I did this, and I did a sort of like, what is my perfect weekly schedule? And when I wrote it down the first time, I could not have been further from that reality. Like, it was, my actual schedule was so far off of what my ideal schedule was. Like, it wasn't even funny. I was like, oh, well, that's a joke. How in the world am I ever going to get there? But what I did is I posted it on the wall in my office, and I actually printed up like a weekly calendar. and I had the blocks of like, I would do this at this time. I would do this at this time. I would do, you know, and I had it blocked up. I would do a party here and I'd go to rally here and a party here and I'd do a vendor event here and I would coach my people here and host coach here. I do power hour here. And I had it like all mapped out. And so I put that on my wall in my office, and I just would kind of glance at it every now and again. And the craziest thing is like within the year, I was like so much closer to that schedule. And I was like, wow, I am like almost there. Because what would happen is when some new obligation or commitment would come into my schedule, I would try and schedule it sort of in and around those blocks. So if it's a family thing, I would make sure not schedule it during the times I had marked off for business. And so it just kind of happened slowly, very organically as new things kind of, if I had a choice as to when something was going to hit my calendar, I would try to kind of put it in those places. And so it happened over time. But there's so many different ways to do this, and you can just sit down and journal. Another way that I've done it in the past is journaling backwards, right? And so instead of like trying to journal forwards, like going into the future, I start already in the future and I'm looking back. And that has helped me too, because sometimes for whatever reason, I can't go forward. Like maybe there's so much drama going on in my life right now. I can't see past that drama to think and dream about a day without the drama, right? And so what I would do is I would say, like I'd start like at the end of the year, and at the end of the year I had stepped up to executive director, and I'm looking back and it's like I'm journaling about the past year. And so I'm just like, you know, it all started back in January when I decided at the beginning of the year, every time Tupperware put a challenge, even if I wasn't into it, I was going to go for it. And so I started like going through the year. And it's funny because when you start that, then you really start making stuff up, right? You're just like, and then in February, I found the most amazing recruit and they just stepped right up to director in 1 month, you know, and it turns into a child story that almost sounds fake, but it just kind of helps to kind of do it that way. It kind of gets those juices flowing. So if this is something you struggle with, there are a couple different techniques that maybe you could try.
So I was talking to a girl on my team yesterday, and she doesn't work right now. And she started Tupperware thinking maybe she could make enough money to keep from going to work. Well, then she's telling me yesterday, she goes, I'm going to have to go find a job. And I was like, okay, I get that, you know. And I said, what are the benefits of you going to find a job? And we're talking about like doing the Facebook parties and contacting people and stuff. She goes, I just don't have time to do all that. And I said, okay. And she goes, do you understand that? I said, yeah, but do you have paper and pencil with you? And she was like, well, yeah, I got a thing. I said, okay, I want you to write down what you feel like you don't have time to do with Tupperware. So she was like making phone calls, this, that, and the other, you know. I said, how much time do you think that would take you, let's say a week? And she goes, I don't know, maybe like 10 hours, but I just don't have the time. I said, okay. I said, no, I want you to take that same schedule. And I said, the jobs you're talking to me about getting, I said, I want you to totally block off 5 days a week from 2 o'clock in the afternoon till 12 o'clock at night. And she goes, why would I do that? I said, because if you're going to work 3 to 11, 5 days a week, I said, in that amount of time, you don't think you could find the time to make a few phone calls at home and schedule a few Facebook parties and not have to leave the house 8 hours a day, 5 days a week? And she goes, oh. I said, because if you have to go to work, you don't have a choice. I said, you just have to leave the house. You have to go. You have to be there. I said, but if something comes up when you're supposed to make those phone calls, you can reschedule that to later in the day or tomorrow morning. I said, so I understand you need to get a job for the money, but I said, you might want to think about how you're scheduling things. And she was like, I actually never even thought about scheduling stuff for Tupperware. And I was like, yeah, remember when I said that it works if you work? Well, here we are.
It's so true. And it's just because people just don't think about it. And I'm the same way. My goodness, you know, when it comes to my personal business, if I do not schedule that, it's easy for me to push it off because you know what? Nobody sees me do it. Nobody sees me doing my personal parties, right? They see me coaching, you know, like if I have a scheduled appointment to coach with somebody, they see that. They see whether or not I'm at rally. They see me showing up in all those ways, but they don't see it when I have a personal party. So if I didn't do that this week, nobody sees that. So those are the things that have a tendency, like if I don't schedule them, they get pushed off for sure. All right. You ready to dig in chapter 8?
Yes.
All right, let's do it.
Okay. You want me to read?
Yes.
Okay. Got it. When bus 11 pulled up to George's bus stop the next morning, he watched a man run off the bus and then turn around and shout, "You're crazy, lady." "Oh yeah," Joy shouted back. "When you're ready to learn something on my bus, just let me know." "What was that all about?" George asked as he took his usual seat. "He believes in the biggest illusion of our time," Joy answered. "Bigger than the illusion that the world is flat or that the sun moves east to west." "Illusion?" George paused. "What are you talking about?" "The illusion that we live in a physical world," she declared with the confidence of a college professor. "You see, George, the universe is made of energy. Einstein taught us that." Danny lifted a piece of paper. "See, George, E=mc squared," he said. Joy continued. Einstein taught that anything that is matter is energy. So all the physical stuff we see, and even our own bodies, are really made of energy. So this is an energetic universe we live in, and everything about us is energy. But you don't need to get deep and know anything about science to understand that life is all about energy, Joyce said. All you have to do is think about your own life. Think about the people who increase your energy and those who drain you. Think about the foods you eat that make you feel great and those that make you want to take a nap. Think about the projects at work that energize you and those that burn you out. Everything is energy. It's found in our thoughts, the words we say, the music we listen to, and the people we surround ourselves with. Are you with me, George? "I am," answered George, who was thinking that he couldn't remember the last time anything at work had energized him. "Watch professional football or basketball on television," she continued, "and you'll always hear the announcers talk about the energy of the team, the energy of a player, or the energy of the fans. Walk into any arena or stadium and you can feel the energy of the crowd. It's like there's electricity in the air. Coaches often talk about how their players are on the same wavelength or how the team is just out of sync. They'll also say things like, 'We're playing with a lot of energy tonight.' It's all about energy, George. Have you ever worked with a colleague and you both knew what each other was going to say next? Or you said the same thing at the same time?" "Of course," George answered. "Happens all the time." "Or has your wife ever read your mind?" "Too many times," he said with a smirk. "Energy of thought," she declared. "Our thoughts are powerful because they are loaded with energy. That's why I asked you to write down your vision for your life." This is where I realized I hadn't done it. "Work and family," she said. "There is an energy to thought. And when you identify that you desire and write down your vision, you begin the process of mobilizing the energy to increase the life you want. After all, you can't go somewhere if you don't have a vision of where you want to go. It's like trying to build a house without a set of plans and picture what it's going to look like. It's like me driving this bus with no clue where my destination is. So George, please tell me you have a vision. Tell me where you want to go. I hope you wrote it down on the paper I gave you."
Okay, so one of the things I loved about this and that I've never really truly been able to put into words is our thoughts are powerful because they're loaded with energy. And the next part where there is an energy to thought, and when you identify what you desire and write down your vision, you begin the process of mobilizing the energy to create the life you want. Because even though I know that to be true because I've experienced it in my own life, I didn't know it was like a thing. You know what I mean? Like I didn't know how to like put that into words other than, oh, write down your goals, you know, because that's what you do. And statistics show that if you write them down, they'll happen, right? And so, but I love the way this was worded there. And it's easy for us to be able to, like, if we're working with somebody around vision or something like that, this is a really clear way to kind of like say, this is why we're doing it. So do it, you know? That makes sense?
Yes.
That's why you did it, right, Jenny?
Yes, something like that. And I was afraid somebody was going to ask me if I had.
If somebody, do you mean me?
Maybe. Maybe.
Oh my goodness.
Mm.
All
No,
right.
this stuff's good. It really is good. It's just, it's honestly stuff I never did. So, you know, and like when I first started hearing about it, I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. Sure, okay, do that. All right, chapter 9. Mel, are you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to tell you guys that, like, I feel like, you know, like your vision, back in the day when I wasn't in Tupperware, I never thought about that. I mean, we had our goals, and it was like, you know, well, I want to have 2.5 kids, white picket fence, that type thing. But we really wasn't taught, at least I wasn't, how to break all that down and, you know, set a goal or whatever. And so it was like, okay, I'm going to college, I'm going to be working this job, and I'm going to have my kids, and I'm going to do this, and then you're done. It's not like you break it down. Whereas when we're in Tupperware, I think Tupperware is not about the bowls, as we always say, and it really isn't, because I have learned so much about myself, and I've come out of my shell, blah, blah, blah. But I think when we vision the whole future or whatever, where we want to go with our business as well as in our just everyday life, I don't want to sound whatever, but I think we do it better than other people because we kind of have to go through it with our business. So it's like, okay, we learn how to make goals in our life. We learn how to, you know, set standards. And whereas if we're not in Tupperware, we're probably not going to learn that. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's a good thing, you know?
Absolutely.
There was like a point in time, and I think this is where I quit with the goals and the vision and the what do you want to be, and, you know, especially the write it down and stuff like that. There was a point when I was younger, and a lot of you guys are too young for this, but some of you aren't. There was a big, and it was, in my case, it was a religious thing where they went through this whole name it and claim it thing. And the thing was, God had said that if you believed it and you said it, you know, that he would provide. And they were like, people were like, if you said it, God was obligated to do it.
Oh.
And oh yeah, it was bad. It was bad. And I got so burnt out on that because it was stupid stuff. It was like, oh, well, I want a jet. You know, what are you going to do with a jet? You know, you don't even have a pilot's license. What the freak are you going to do with a jet? But it was all about money. It was all about things. Yeah. And I got really, really discouraged with that. And so we had been in 2 other direct sales companies before this, Michael and I had together. And when I first went to the Tupperware meeting, the first rally I ever went to, I talked to Pam for about 10.3 seconds. And she said, she came up to me and she said, I'm so glad you're here. Yeah, I mean, you know how she is, right? So glad to have you here. And I'm so excited. And I looked at her and I had already decided it was a Ken and Barbie deal, right? And so I looked at her and I said, yeah, I've been in direct sales before and I'm not buying into any of this. I did. And I waited for her to do the things other people had done, like, oh no, let me explain to you, blah, blah, you know, and go into this long thing. And she stood there and she looked at me for a second and she goes, well, doll, I hope you stick around long enough to find out you're wrong. And she just turned around and walked away. And I was like,
that's a great answer.
I know. I was like, well, damn. And I went home and Michael was like, how was that? I said, it's run by Ken and Barbie, but Barbie has kind of an attitude.
That's funny.
It was funny, but it was, and I think if she had tried to tell me how amazing it was, I'd have been like, yeah, no. I've been there, done that, heard all this. Don't want to hear it. So, okay, George is going to share his vision. Hang on, guys. George, in fact, did have a vision, several of them, and he had written them down. He pulled out the paper from his briefcase and explained to Joy that at first it had been a little hard to do because it had been so long since he had thought about what he wanted. I spend so much time living my life according to everyone's demands that it actually felt strange to think about what I want. That's what I was looking for before. But once I got started, it felt really good to think about what I want for my life. She nodded, reassuring him with her big eyes and smile. Go on, George, do tell. He told her about his vision for his personal life, how he had been a star college athlete who played lacrosse, and how he wanted to get back into great shape and get rid of his big gut that hung over his belt. He explained how thinking about his vision made him remember a time in the past when he had been really happy and alive and how he wanted to feel that way again. He told Joy about wanting to be a better father and husband as well. I want my kids to look back 20 years from now and think of me as happy, positive, a happy, positive influence in their lives, he shared. That's not the case now, so I know something has to change. What about your wife, Joy asked. What's your vision there? I want my wife to stay married to me, he said. I have this vision of us laughing together like we used to, remembering why we fell in love in the first place. You're such a romantic, Joy said, teasing him. She knew he had a good heart. She had liked him from the moment she had seen him get on the bus and had known buried underneath all those dark clouds was a light that wanted to shine. She was thrilled to see that light coming through as he shared his vision with her. George, who was blushing now, however, didn't feel like a romantic at all. On the contrary, he was petrified of losing his marriage, so he explained to Joy his situation and his hope that things would turn around. They'll improve, Joy reassured him, but George didn't share her confidence. Just trust, she said calmly, trust. Then she broached the subject of work and his vision for success at the energy company. George shared with Joy how he and his product marketing team had a big launch coming up for a new light bulb called the Energy 2000. If it doesn't go well, I am toast. My career is done. So my vision is to somehow get my team on the same page and work really hard together to create and deliver a successful launch. On a scale of 1 to 10, how ready would you say you are for this product launch? Joy asked. About a 2, George answered. We're disorganized, unmotivated, and quite frankly, a sorry bunch. That's not good, dude, Marty shouted from the back of the bus. No, it's not good at all, George answered, thinking that he wished the dude in the back of the bus would just be quiet. Joy jumped into the conversation. No, it's not good, George, but that doesn't mean it can't be good. It's not like we haven't faced crisis before on my bus. She looked at Marty. Remember your rehab, Marty? When Danny had that heart attack, what turned it all around was your desire and vision to change and the focus to make it happen. Unfortunately, it takes a crisis for many of us to change, she added. I don't know why, but it does. I wish more people wouldn't wait for things to fall apart before they start thinking about their life and what they want. They don't have to wait, you know, but sometimes that's what it takes. Sometimes we have to see what we don't want to know what we do want. As she was talking, George thought of his mother with cancer and how she had told him all the changes she wanted to make when she survived, and he knew exactly what Joy was talking about. So yes, George, Joy continued, this is your crisis, but it's also your opportunity. Every crisis offers an opportunity to grow stronger and wiser, to reach deep within and discover a better you that will create a better outcome. So while this is your crisis, what matters most is what you do with it. Okay, so now that you know where you want to go and you have your desire and vision, you're ready for rule number 2.
You can just keep going.
Okay. Danny pulled out rule number 2 on a piece of paper, which said, desire, vision, and focus. Move your bus in the right direction. Joy turned around, looked at George, and said, it's all about focus, George. Without focus, buildings don't get built, paintings don't get painted, and energy gets scattered. You told us what you want. You shared your vision. Now I want to help you turn that vision into reality, and it all starts with thoughts. How are my thoughts going to make my work and marriage better? George asked in a skeptical tone. The energy of thought, as we discussed, Joy answered confidently. Each day I want you to focus on your vision for 10 minutes and see yourself creating everything you wrote down on that paper. You see, George, there is a law of energy. It's called the law of attraction, Marty shouted from the back of the bus. That's right, the law of attraction, Joy continued, and it says that the more we focus on something, the more we think about something, the more it shows up in our lives. For instance, I bet every time you buy a new car, you start seeing it everywhere on the road. Joy nodded, knowing it was true. Ever wonder why that is? George asked rhetorically. But before George could answer, Joy said, because thoughts are magnetic. What we think about, we attract. What we think about expands and grows. What we put our energy and attention on starts to show up more in our life, and the energy we project through our thoughts is the energy we receive. That's why so many people have had the experience of thinking of a friend or relative, and then they call on the phone, Marty confirmed. The phenomenon actually has a scientific name. It's called telephone telepathy, he proudly shared, showing the research on his computer. Joy continued, there's energy to thought, so it's important that you spend your time thinking about what you do want rather than what you don't want. You've got to focus. Do you know these people, George, who all they do is complain? They focus on what they don't want, don't like, and don't have? Of course I do, George answered, thinking to himself he was one of them. Well, I tell those people that when you complain, you get more things to complain about. So no more complaining and negativity, okay, George? I don't allow complaining on my bus, because if you're complaining, you can't be thinking about or creating what you do want. Plus, your complaining also ruins everyone else's ride. I have a saying I used to say on my school bus to the kids, and now I say it to my adult passengers as well, because they often need to hear it more than the kids. It goes like this: we're winners, not whiners. With that, the bus erupted in laughter and everyone started chanting, we're winners, not whiners. So I want you to stop thinking about what you don't want and start focusing your energy on your vision and what you do want. Make sense, George? Joy asked. The more you see it, the more likely it will happen. Marty from the back of the bus, Marty said from the back of the bus as he walked towards George to show him the research on visualization and Olympic athletes. All the Olympic athletes use it because there's so much research that shows it works, Marty said. Behind every gold medal are hours of visualizing their best performance or race. So why shouldn't dudes like you and I use it to create phenomenal life and success? Marty knew this better than anyone else. He was one of those guys who never had had any luck until Joy showed him to create his own luck by projecting lucky energy. He was a surfer who dabbled in the internet business, and he had just started a new company after selling his previous venture for several $1 million. Now he only expects good fortune, and that's what he gets. We live in an energy field of dreams, Joy cheered. If you build it in your mind, focus on seeing it, and take action, the success will come. They were definitely making George think. His life was falling apart, and maybe it was because of his negativity, as his wife had told him so many times. He thought of himself at work and home and saw himself complaining a lot. But would changing these thoughts right now really make such a difference, he wondered? Would focusing on his vision really help attract it? He was an athlete, and he had heard about athletes using visualization before, but that's sports and this is life. A lot of negativity and problems had been accumulating for a long time, and it had taken him a while to reach this crisis. Field of dreams, right, he thought skeptically. Instead, I'm building a big pile of you-know-what. Could he really turn it around that easily? But, on the other hand, he didn't have a good reason not to try it. At this point, he would try anything if it could mean saving his job and marriage. With a big product launch next Friday for the Energy 2000, this was a time for dreams because he had nothing else. Am I still going?
No, I think that there is a lot of really good content in this. And again, it's just a way, sometimes I have a hard time finding the words to explain to somebody about that negative energy, about the complaining, about all of that. I told somebody the other day, I said, here's the thing. I said, because they were saying they were stressed, they were worried, they were scared about like things happening in their business. And I said, here's the thing. I said, if you keep telling yourself that, you're just going to keep getting more of that. And I said, and it's even worse when it's actually coming out of your mouth. We all have those thoughts, but we can slow it down by going to the positive side. I said, but when it's coming out of your mouth, you're hearing it in your own voice. So it's a circle and it's going back in, right? And so I'm like, so it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy spoken in your own word, I'm like, so you got to keep it from coming out because that just kind of solidifies it. And so I love a lot of these word choices about just kind of like, I even love, like at the end, we live in an energy field of dreams. And I was like, I love that. If you build it in your mind, focus on seeing it and take action, the success will come. Now, the key there is take action. So you talking about the claim it and receive it type of preaching, right? I think sometimes that's where they're like, well, I'm doing all this positive stuff and I'm thinking all these positive things, but they're not taking action towards whatever that positive vision they have for their businesses, right? And so that is one of the most important pieces to that puzzle is taking the action. But I also like when he talks about thoughts are magnetic. What we think about, we attract. What we think about expands and grows, and what we put our energy and attention on starts to show up more in our life. And the energy we project through our thoughts is the energy we receive. And we talk about that. What you think about, you bring about, right? And so, that's one of those like catchphrases that, hey, when somebody's saying all this negative stuff, you're like, hey, what you think about, you bring about, you better knock it off, right? But that just kind of explains it a little bit further, because for somebody who has been told that many times, because for whatever reason, they have a tendency to be on the negative side, they get to the point where they're just like, yeah, right? If you're always like, hey, what you think about it? Because if they're on that negative side, you're probably, and you're a positive person, you're probably saying that to them a lot, right? And they're like, yeah. And you're just like, and that's why you are where you are, you know, but to be able to kind of explain it a little bit further and take it a little bit further, it might help get past the resistance of trying to get them to think a little bit more on the positive side. And it's true, when you complain, you get more things to complain about. That's true.
Absolutely. Yep.
We've all experienced that. That's right. You know, I think that truly is where the saying, when it rains, it pours, comes from. Melanie, did you have something you wanted to share?
Yeah, I just want to say, like when people start Tupperware, a lot of times they're like, okay, I sell Tupperware, so where's all my customers? You said this was going to work. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it's like, dang, you got 500 people knocking on your front door. It doesn't happen. Yeah, so I think a lot of times people don't realize that, like Jenny says, you have to work, here we are. And there's a saying that goes, I was trying to think of it. I think it's called, where focus goes, energy flows. I think that's how it goes.
Yes.
Yeah. So, it's so true. And I mean, people, focus, it's like, okay, I can focus for like 10 minutes and then my mind goes wandering. Well, it's like your plan, your desire, your goals, whatever it is, it's like you break it down, just like we're taught. You break it down, you have your plan for this week, next week, not for the whole month. You break it down week by week or whatever, even day by day. Some people need to do that. And focus. It's like, do you want to go? Just like your journal at the end of the year. Is this where you want to be at the end of the year? Well, then this is what you need to do this week to keep on pace to have that by the end of the year. So I think when people realize that, right there gives you enough energy to go and do it. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. You're spot on with that.
Yeah.
I love it. All right, Jenny, are you ready?
Sure. Here we go. The power of positive energy. I don't know why I'm having such a hard time this morning. Okay, here we go. Okay, I'm on the bus, George said. I've got my direction set and my vision is good. But I have to tell you, it's not easy to think about what you want and be positive when you don't have a lot of things to be positive about. And you keep getting what you don't want. You don't know the sharks I'm dealing with at work. You have no idea the challenges I'm facing right now. I'm hitting a lot of roadblocks. You're right, George, Joy answered. I don't know all you're facing, but I do know that if you want to change your situation, you must first change your thoughts. Because if you keep on thinking what you have been thinking, you'll keep on getting what you have been getting. I also know this special formula I want to share with you. Show him, Danny. Danny reached into his briefcase and pulled out a paper-sized sheet of cardboard. As George wondered how many signs he had in there, Danny lifted up the cardboard, which said, E plus P equals O. The E stands for events in your life, Danny explained. The P stands for perception, and the O stands for outcome. We can't control the events in our life, but we can control how we perceive them, and our perception and response to the events determine our outcome. The P can also stand for positive energy, Joy said, and this formula explains why positive energy is so important. Sure, you have your vision for what you want to create in your life, but there will always be people who don't share your vision. There will always be potholes and roadblocks that can block your journey on the road of life. Things happen like your flat tire, George, but it's how we choose to deal with the events in our life that mean everything. We all get down, but the key is what we do to turn life around. Like I told you, choose wisely. Positive energy and positive people create positive results. There is certainly a lot of negativity in the world, and choosing positive energy helps us deal with the negative people and negative situations that can knock us off course. Positive energy helps keep the bus moving forward with momentum. And we're not talking about the fake kind of chest-thumping, rah-rah positive energy that simply masks our negativity and annoys people. No, this is the real deal we're talking about real positive energy that helps you overcome obstacles and challenges to create success. We're talking about trust, faith, enthusiasm, purpose, joy, and happiness. We're talking about the positive energy to inspire and lead others. We're talking about the positive energy that makes you feel great instead of the negative energy that drains you. This is the real stuff, my man, and this is the key to life and rule number 3. Show him, Danny. Rule number 3, fuel your ride with positive energy. Think of it like this, George, Joy continued. Desire, vision, and focus help you turn the bus in the right direction, but positive energy is necessary to take you where you want to go. Every day when we look at the gas pump of life, we have a choice between positive energy and negative energy. Positive energy is high-octane fuel for the ride of your life, while negative energy causes sludge to accumulate in your energy pipeline. But what do I do with the negativity I have, George asked George. Joy pointed to the trash bucket. Right there, George. Let it go. You release it, you throw it out, you transform it. When the work is piled high on your desk, think about how thankful you are to even have a job while so many are unemployed. When work is driving you crazy, think about the fact that you're healthy enough to work. When you're sitting in traffic, be thankful you can drive a car while so many have to walk miles just to get clean water. When the restaurant messes up your meal, think about how many unfed mouths there are in the world. As I told my father a number of years ago when he lost the love of his life, my mother, you had the kind of love for so many years that many people spend a lifetime searching for and never find. Be thankful for that. Joy added, where there is negative, there is always a positive. Where there is a dark cloud, there is always a sun shining behind it. So you're saying that I need to keep fueling my life with positive energy if I want to be successful, George asked. I'm not saying it, George answered. I'm screaming it. I have found out that where there is a void, negativity will fill it. So we must keep fueling up with positive energy so the negative energy doesn't have room to expand. We must fuel up daily with positive thoughts, cultivate positive feelings, and take positive actions. Positive energy is all of those things. Without it, your ride will stall. And what about my team at work, George asked. Same thing, Joy answered. You'll need to get them focused and positive too. You'll want them to understand and be a part of your vision. You'll want to get them on the bus. I've got some rules for you that are going to make them big time successes, but we're not ready for that yet. First, let's help you fuel up with positive energy because you can't share the positive energy if you don't have it yourself. Once you get your bus rolling, then you'll be ready to ask your team to get on. 1 mile at a time, my man. One positive thought, feeling, and action at a time. We'll talk about your team soon. As the bus approached George's stop, Joy directed Marty to pull out what she called the energy book and read him the story about the positive dog. Marty picked up the book that was sitting next to him and started reading. A man goes to the village to visit the wise man, and he says to the wise man, I feel like there are 2 dogs inside me. One dog is this positive, loving, kind, and gentle dog, and then I have this angry, mean-spirited, and negative dog, and they fight all the time. I don't know which is going to win. The wise man thinks for a moment and says, I know which is going to win, the one you feed most, so feed the positive dog. Thank you, Marty, Joy said as she directed him to give George the book. I can't, said George, it's yours. No, it's yours, said Marty. We give them away all the time on the bus, so consider it a gift of energy. Instead of you swimming against the current of life, this book will help you ride some awesome energy waves. That's right, said Joy. This book is going to help you take action and feed the positive dog inside you so you cultivate the positive energy you need to succeed. It's pretty simple. Just do one of the 10-minute exercises in the book. Pick any one you want. Just do one today and feel your energy rise. I will, George said. I'm ready to take action. As George walked off the bus and toward his building, Joy shouted, Feed the positive dog, George, feed the positive dog. He looked back and pumped his fist in the air as he walked to work, but then he realized he was walking into a building where his future couldn't be more negative.
So there's a ton in this chapter. I mean, just sort of, talking about, the events plus perception equals the outcome. I mean, that itself is really powerful. Just talking about just all of the different ways to kind of fuel that positivity in your own life. I just love it. There's so much I highlighted in here are things that we could do ourselves. And yeah, I mean, they're absolutely right. We have to do that ourselves before we can expect anybody else to partake in our journey of positivity.
Yeah, I think it reminds me of like Stanova when he used to say he would get up in the morning and he would look in the mirror and say, I'm possible, and he would scream it. And you know what? It's like how we all would laugh, it would be corny, and we would go to our rooms, and the next morning we're telling each other, it's like, okay, don't forget to say I'm possible in the mirror, and we would all laugh about it. But really, like affirmations and quotes. I love quotes. And so it's like every time I'm feeling down, it's like I had a period this week of whateverness, and it's like, okay, you got to get yourself out of this. You know, you can't get down. So I went to my quotes, and it's like I started reading quotes, and I had positive things. And so it's like, we need to learn, we need to teach others what to do, where to go when you're feeling down, when you need to be positive. And it's like, one thing I learned a long time ago, it's like, it takes energy to be negative and it takes energy to be positive. Well, if I'm going to be spending energy, why not go ahead and be positive, you know?
That makes sense. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. I totally agree.
Well, they say you frown, you spend more muscles when you frown than when you smile. So it's like, if you're going to spend more muscles, why not be, you know, and spend less muscles, you know, when you smile, because, you know, it's like, why not? It's like the energy thing. So I try to keep videos in my head, you know, like if I'm down, I go straight to YouTube, or, you know, I go quotes, I go to Pinterest, and it's like anything to get me going, I go for, you know. So, you know, I just think sometimes we need to tell others, you know, here's what I do. So here's an idea, maybe what you could do. Maybe you could go for quotes. Maybe you could watch a video. Maybe you could, you know, blah, 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 whatever.
Mel, your volume is way down.
Oh, crap.
But we heard you. We heard you. It was just a little bit muffled. Yeah,
You probably
I
heard that too. Oh, crap.
I agree with you, Mel. And I think that that's really powerful, to know yourself well enough to know when you need to infuse yourself with that stuff. You know, I think there are a lot of people that they're not there yet. Like, they understand all of the concepts of what we're talking about, but they don't go ahead and pull themselves out. Sometimes they're more reliant on somebody else to pull them out. And that's okay. That's a great place to start. If you don't know how to pull yourself out, if you have somebody that you can call that can pull you out, that's a great place to start. But you have to learn how to do it yourself. You have to learn, like, okay, I'm in this place. I'm going to watch these videos. I'm going to listen to this song because it makes me happy. I'm going to look at these. I'm a big quote person too, Mel, like big time. So when I do the same thing, I go to Pinterest and I just, you know, I Google like inspirational quotes or comeback quotes or whatever, you know, and things like that. And YouTube, yes, I do the same thing. I'm like motivational videos or comeback videos or, you know, things like that to kind of like help pump me up. And it helps so much.
So I'm a big music person. Like, if I can listen to songs and they will absolutely change my mood one way or the other. So I do have to kind of be careful what songs I listen to. I have learned to change the station on the radio, or there are certain CDs I do not put in my car. But
right.
Talking about like negative people, I have a friend and I love her to death, but she's very, very negative. And we'll talk and I'm like, you know, you got to get away from that. And she says on a regular basis, you really shouldn't talk to me. I'm just too negative. And I'm like, no, you're actually my project. I said, because eventually you are not going to be negative like this. It's driving me crazy. But like, so my kids, what my middle daughter, and Ellen knows Becky, she's a lot like me, but she's very, help me out here, Ellen. I have some filter. Becky has none. Okay. Becky just says whatever comes to her mind.
Becky scares me a little.
Becky scares a lot of people. So I was talking to her yesterday and she's telling me all this stuff. She's telling me they just bought their house. So she's all excited about buying the house and stuff like that. And I'm like, that's great. She goes, but it's got so much work. I said, well, if you bought it, you know, you've got years to work on it now. So just do a little bit at a time. Don't overextend yourself. Don't try and do it all at once. You know, you don't have to live in a mansion by next year. Just do a little at a time. So then she asked me about the car. And she goes, so does Tupperware just give you this car? And I'm just pointing to her. And she goes, so when you quit selling Tupperware, you're not going to have a car. Then what are you going to do? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she goes, if you quit selling Tupperware and you don't have a car, what are you going to do for a car? I said, then I'll buy a car when I retire or whatever. Well, what if you don't have enough money to buy a car? I said, well, you know what? If I can have that car until I retire, I'll have enough money to buy a car. Okay.
Exactly.
But I mean, she was just like, because at first she was like, Mom, that's great. But then everything that could possibly go wrong was coming out of her mouth. She was just like, so what if this? What if that? What if you don't have that? And I'm like, Becky, it's fine. You know, but I tell my kids, I tell people all the time when they start asking me about that, have I asked you to pay my bills? Then don't worry about it. You know, and
Not your problem.
I said, when was the last time I asked you to make my car payment for me? And she goes, well, you've never asked me to make a car payment for you. I said, then don't worry about my car. I said, I got this. But yeah, she's one of those little people that, and she doesn't mean to be negative. She thinks she's being practical. And I blame that on me, because that was, I was that way a lot when they were growing up. They'd come in and go, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and I go, well, what about this? So, you know, and I would tell them, you know, you have to be practical. Yeah. So that's biting me in the butt. But
yeah, but it's a good thing to practically think through things and just sort of troubleshoot. Right.
Yeah.
And which is pretty much what she's kind of doing, but in a berating sort of way.
Can I just have the moment, please? Can I just have the moment?
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. All right, we have enough time to go ahead and do chapter 12, I think, because it's just one page. And then we will pick up at chapter 13 next week. Sound good?
Yep. Okay. As George sat at his desk, thumbing through the book Marty had given him, looking for a positive energy exercise that appealed to him, he thought of his old friend Chuck, who had made a fortune during the internet boom. He remembered how surprised he had been to hear Chuck and his wife had divorced. He thought about appearances and how on the outside Chuck seemed to have everything: money, family, big house, a plethora of companies that wanted Chuck to run them. Yet George realized everything isn't always what they seem. He found out that Chuck really had a lot of personal problems that spilled over and caused the destruction of everything else in his life. When George really thought about it, he never remembered Chuck being happy. Thinking of Chuck made him realize even more than ever that he didn't want to go down that road. Everyone else probably thought they had it all too. If they only knew, he thought. Appearances weren't enough. The show wasn't doing it anymore. He wanted to feel good, so a big smile came across his face when he came across the thank you walk in the energy book. One moment he was reading how it's physically impossible to be stressed and thankful at the same moment, and the next minute he was walking around his building outside saying what he was grateful for. He knew if people from his company saw him talking to himself, they'd think he was crazy, but he didn't mind. Sure, it felt a little funny, but the walk was energizing him, and counting his blessings really did make him feel great. The book said that being grateful floods the body and brain with positive endorphins and emotions, and combined with walking is a powerful energy booster. It sure was right. As George walked back into his building, he felt more positive, energized, and ready to make the day at work. Joy was right, he thought. Feeding the positive dog does feel good. Now, if I can just feed the lions at work, it'll be okay. He chuckled as he walked into his office to meet with his team about the new product launch.
So I wonder if this is like, if the book, The Positive Dog, has these exercises and stuff in it. You have that book, don't you, Jenny?
Yeah, look.
Yeah, because I was like, you know, a lot of times he kind of references his other books and stuff in this and other, you know, techniques and stuff that he talks about. And I just kind of wonder if, because that would be cool. I don't have that book. I should get it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, because I mean, again, that goes back to the techniques like Mel, right? It goes back to when you have that awareness that you're kind of going down, you know, you're going down the spiral, that you can pull yourself back out and be like, okay, this is not okay. I need to change my energy. And I do that a lot. Like okay, so while we've been in quarantine and whatever, and everybody's been home, I would go for a walk. I'm like, I need to change my energy. I'm like, that needs to happen right now. So I would go for a walk just to kind of like shake it off, whatever it was that was going on in my head. And other times, what I would do is if I felt like I was kind of in a rut and my energy was low, I will change my environment, right? And so I would pack my stuff and I would go work at Panera for the afternoon, and just so I could just kind of change my environment. And it definitely gives you this energy boost when you change your environment. Or maybe you want something, maybe it's time to just kind of rearrange your office. Rearranging your space puts energy out there too, whether you're organizing or even if you're just like, I'm going to take my desk and face this way, or I'm going to move this chair over here. It creates like an energy. So, yeah.
So I bought the set of books, right? And I don't buy myself a whole lot of stuff a whole lot because I just don't want a whole lot of stuff. So I don't buy stuff just for the sake of saying, oh, I bought this. So I looked at those books a long time before I got them. But here's and it's like, sometimes it's little weird things that matter. So the books they come in this box set and they're sitting on my dresser. And every morning when I get up, the first thing I see is my dresser, because when I get out of bed, the dresser's right there. So I see these books every morning. And somewhere in the back of my head, it just clicks that I thought I was worth that $100. So
I love that.
Yeah, it is. It's like, I look at it and think, yeah, okay.
I'm worth it.
I'm worth it. I'm enough. I have a bracelet that says I'm enough. And, and you'd have to be in my head, which is not a good place to be. So don't, but it's talk about scary. But yeah, it's just funny because I see those books in the morning and I'm like, yeah, I bought those for me. I can read those.
That is so powerful. And I had an experience like that too. And it wasn't about books or something that was like bettering me. But when we went to Vegas one time, we went shopping, like we were wandering around, we went out to dinner and then we were wandering around this like mall area with a whole bunch of shops. Well, I went into a Coach store and I bought myself a Coach watch, right? And I would like the fact that I spent that much money on a watch for myself. And this was probably 8+ years ago when we were still like strapped so bad for cash. But I was like, and Pam said, you should get that for yourself. She said, you should get that for yourself for your next goal that you're going to hit. Like basically like, well, now you got to hit your goal because you bought this watch. Right. And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to buy this watch. So a couple years ago, the strap, like this part of the watch broke. And I was like, so I called Coach and they're like, oh, go into a store. I went into the store. They're like, yeah, we don't really even sell watches anymore. And I'm like, well, can it be repaired? And she's like, yeah, but you need to make a decision that if they get it and they give you a quote on how much it's going to be, do they ship it back to you? You're going to have to pay the shipping back to you and all this other stuff. And so I walked out, I left my watch there and I walked out of the store and I was so upset and I started to cry. And then I was like, oh my gosh, how ridiculous am I? I'm crying about a Coach watch that I may or may not be able to get fixed. And I was so I was upset and embarrassed that I was so upset about this. So I called my sister, my oldest sister, Elizabeth, and I called her and I was like, she's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, I just dropped off my Coach watch and I don't know if I'm going to get it back. And she was like, and I'm like, and I feel ridiculous for crying about this Coach watch and all this. And then she, and I said, but I bought it. It was the first thing I bought for myself from my Tupperware earnings that I paid, for me, just for me, not for anybody else. And she was just like, well, that's why you're upset. And I was like, yeah, I just didn't realize like how symbolic it was, because when I'm driving my car, I'm looking at this watch. When I'm doing all these things, I would see the watch and it was just like, I was worth that. Right. And I was like, I was worth that. And I earned that. And I worked my buns off to get that watch. And so I still have it. The battery's dead. And the thing on the back is starting to falter again, but I'm not getting rid of that watch.
You just need to put it in a little shadow box and hang it on your wall in your office. Yes, there it is.
Watch, and it's just like, I just loved it, but it's important for us to do things like that for ourselves, but not only to do things, but recognize the significance of it, that I am worth that. I am worth that investment. The work I'm doing is significant and I'm worth that. So that's why when you said that, I'm like, I love that. That's like my Coach watch. Because I haven't bought anything. I mean, any Coach stuff I have came from Pam. I don't buy things like, I love things like that. I will love them to pieces, but I don't buy them.
Not going to pay for them. Yes.
No, not right now. We have we got to educate all these kids and we got to get cars and insurances and all this. I can't bring myself to spend that kind of money on myself.
Well, when I'm 85 and they put me in the nursing home, make sure they send the books with me. So
whatever you do, those books need to be on her dresser. When she wakes up in the morning, she needs to see them. Oh, that's so funny.
Oh, look at us. It's 10:29.
I know. Bam.
Bye, Gina.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. This is a great book club. Thanks, Jenny, for leading. I appreciate it. And so next week, we will pick up where we left off, and that is chapter 13.
Ellen, I can do next week if you want me to.
Oh my gosh, I would love that. Thanks, Mel. All right, you're in charge next week, Mel. So we start on chapter 13.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
All right.
Bye, guys.
All right, bye.
Bye, guys.